Well, I'm going to assume I'm streaming. This is episode 2. Welcome to episode 2 of Warblog, the show. Um, there's the camera. Um, this is following on quickly from my other live stream. I sort of half watched and came to the conclusion that there was so much lag at some point that I'm really going to have to start figuring out how to stream properly. It seemed okay. The audio is okay, which is sort of more important. I've made some notes, but not many. I'm really sort of winging it on this because I want to just look at the. I've changed some of the settings, so I just want to see if I can get my streaming sort of correct. So we're looking at this Patika province. There's the irritating thing. What's more irritating? Robots eating up all the bandwidth so the server crashes, or that constantly getting in the way. But anyway, so what we're looking at. I was just looking at Twitter as I do, and it said someone wrote a very useful tweet that said Afghanistan declares war on Pakistan. So I thought, oh, that sounds interesting, but it's not really. It's just another border skirmish. But I thought, oh, I'll get that done. I'll have a little talk about that. And it gives me a chance to draw some of these nice sort of mountainous maps. So we're in Patika province. This place I've just sort of squeezed in there again. I sort of figured it out later. It should be around about here. Barmel is a refugee camp that the Pakistan forces are said to have bombed, and which has led to the Afghanistan forces crossing the border and taking out a few outposts. I don't know where they are. Nothing so far has sort of indicated where they are, other than they're in Patika province. Something gave a little clearer indication, but I didn't have time to figure that out. I mean, it's sort of, we don't know. It doesn't matter, but it gives you an idea of what's happening. I've also got some sort of articles up here. I think the most interesting one, which I'll start off with, maybe, because I've watched some other people do their podcasts, and they seem to read from other news reports, and it sounds very clever. So it says Moscow calls for restraint from Afghanistan, Pakistan amid tensions. I just thought, I mean, I don't actually think it's ironic really, but it seems ironic. It feels as though it should be ironic that Moscow are calling for restraint over border tensions. So whatever you do, said the spokesman Maria Zarakov, don't start a special operation into Pakistan. Whatever you do. Yeah, and sort of Putin's nodding his head on that one. I think maybe he's not. That's actually a joke. Maria Zakharova, spokesperson for the Russian Federation Ministry, urged both sides to exercise restraint and engage in constructive dialogue. So he just talks a lot more about that, really. But essentially, just read some of this out. The Pakistan military reported that Taliban have launched unprovoked heavy weapons fire on its outposts near the border. So when you sort of read it like that, it's not declaring war on Pakistan, and it's a sort of, it makes me sort of reflect really on the sort of things that you get in Twitter. I mean, obviously it's now X, and it's never been of much use really, but I think that you sort of somehow need people that can actually look at things as they are, possibly in a little more of a sane light, which is what I intend to do really. So when you read it, it's actually not even worth writing a scenario about, but it's one of my fantastic scenarios. I love these little small ones. But we can get in and play it. I mean, I've no idea what's going to happen. The other interesting thing is this article. It refers to them as the Taliban. Now, I just threw this up in a hurry, really, because following on from my other show, which it's sort of the bandwidth is not great. I just sort of wanted to do something. I'm getting quite excited. If I can get the sort of the setup to work. I was just wondering what this thing here was. It looks like a I mean, you can't see it. This thing here. It looks like another window. It looks like I've got another window open, but it's not. It's the bar. That's confusing me. But I like these little maps. You know, but you can see it. Look, I mean, I'm just looking at the screen now. I'm not even looking at the map. Let's just look at the camera. But you know, I mean, you can get quite clear. Oh, look, Afghanistan. Who spelled that? That's the old spelling. They don't spell it like that anymore. Pakistan, so you know it's in Patika province. But the thing that sort of threw me from the start is that they're calling the Taliban, and I thought, well, what are they actually called? They're not called the Taliban. I've got plenty of Taliban units, and on Wikipedia it says it calls it several things. The Islamic National Army, but it's also got another name, and I'll try and find it because I think things are working a little faster. Because I took the time to close down a few windows. I don't think it's and so I changed the settings in OBS. So you know, I have no idea what it's going to look like, but I closed a few windows because usually I have like a couple of hundred browser windows open and things get slow, and then I start to think that someone's trying to hack into my computer or something. I just need to shut things down really. But it says the Afghan army, the Islamic National Army, also referred to as the Islamic Emirate Army, and the Afghan Army is the land force branch of the Afghan Armed Forces, founded 2021, modern form. It has a particularly uncolourful crest. So I've used the old ones, but I mean, so I don't know. I mean, again, I'm on the sort of learning curve for a lot of things. That's the whole idea of this is, you know, are they actually walking around as the Islamic National Army? Because the photos of them seem quite sort of, you know, well together in uniforms and things, or are they still sort of, you know, operating as the Taliban, as this article seems to be referring them? This is an article in, I can't see that, AMU TV. So it could be that that's a derogatory term to still call them the Taliban. It says Taliban. So in a report released by Pakistan Armed Forces on social media on Saturday, which is yesterday, was 2 days ago now, because it's very early hours on Monday, Pakistan's military said its forces responded with counterfire that killed more than 15 militants. So it's calling these people militants, not soldiers of the Islamic National Army, and inflicted significant losses on the Taliban fighters. So are they still operating as the Taliban? I don't know. The military also stated that the clash was sparked by an infiltration attempt allegedly supported by Afghan Taliban elements. The Taliban, or the Islamic National Army, who we've decided we're dealing with here properly, officially, however, offered a different account. They said the attack was in response to a recent Pakistani airstrike on Afghanistan's Patrika province, which is what we're looking at here, obviously, Patrika province. According to Taliban, those strikes, which targeted a refugee camp in the Barmau district and killed 46 people, including women and children. So there's the Barmau district up there. So essentially what's happened is, and the thing is, it goes on a little bit further. I'll skip this paragraph. It says, I did look this up, but I couldn't find it. But for note, it says the latest exchange has heightened tensions between Islamabad and Taliban as relations between the neighbouring countries continue to deteriorate. Pakistan has long accused Taliban of harbouring militants from the Tariq-e-Taliban Pakistan group, a group responsible for a wave of deadly attacks on Pakistani security forces. So that's a TTP. That's a new one to me, but I mean, obviously, adding the TTP to the vocabulary will be, you know, I mean, it's a bit like the PPK, isn't it? Well, is it a PKK, a PPK? You know, so what is this Tariq-e-Taliban Pakistan? So basically, it sounds as though it's, well, obviously what it sounds like, really. So it might be worth making up some units for those. I was going to, but I thought, well, I don't know. The TTP, which shares ideological ties with the Afghan Taliban, has intensified its operations since the Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan in 2021. Pakistan alleges that Afghan authorities have provided a safe haven for the TTP fighters, a charge the Taliban government denies. You get this quite often. I mean, it's the same with sort of, is it the Kashmir situation? Not necessarily directly with that, but also the India-Pakistan border situation. They seem to always be firing things at each other, and I think they're both nuclear powers. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting to sort of consider what's been happening since 2021, and what this group is up to, and whether there's any other sort of modelling that can be done around it. But looking at the map, so obviously we're going to go for Afghanistan first, and they're not doing anything because they're sat in their outpost there. I don't know where they were, but Sambaza. So they're just going to end that turn. It should be the other way around, really. So, oh right, I did it the wrong way. They did start the right way around. Right, I was because they're in green. You can see down there they're in green. I thought this is the green ones because I'm mad. Okay. No, they can't. They can't get anywhere. Anyway, they're sneaking up on them. I did wonder whether or not I should have them motorized, and I did wonder whether the irregulars move faster through mountains, but obviously they don't. They just move one at a time, so it's very slow moving. So presumably the Afghan forces, sorry, the Pakistani forces are looking at them through their binoculars. So the Afghans now. So they're now going to attack this outpost. Oh, it's an exchange. So that's the international incident that we've just observed. That's strange, because I'm sure I gave the Pakistan some air power. No, obviously not. I know I've got the air power out. So, well, they can fight back. Another exchange, but at 1-to-1 odds. Right. So it's now the Afghan turn. Well, they're going to withdraw now because they've accomplished their mission. It was a border skirmish against a Pakistan outpost, which has caused international outrage and claims on Twitter that they've declared war on Pakistan, which they haven't, obviously. I mean, these things just go. These are as old as time, border conflicts, which is what Idi Amin did in Tanzania. He just sort of crossed the border, and Tanzania used it as a causa belli and overthrew him. It just goes to show. I think they had a bit more support. We'll just have a quick look because I don't want to spend too much longer on this. I wonder if I can see. I've been doing 14 minutes. As I say, this is just really me just sort of practicing with my streaming, really. I'm getting quite excited about it. It's a bit of faff because, to be quite honest, I have to set the green screen up every time, and if I can't get, well, I'm going to have to reconsider. If I can't get actually a proper stream, I wonder if I can see. This thing's taking forever to load now. Let's see. So what I'm trying to do is try and sort of get some system where I can constantly make proper mental notes so that I can be prepared for the next show and building on and on, etc. And I was actually thinking this approach. I've actually been doing this for years anyway. Quite a lot of my videos, just from memory, not from ever really looking at them, were explaining certain situations that was happening, but in a more informal way. I'm just going to have a quick look at my channel. Just to see whether it's streaming. I imagine it is. It says it is. It seems fairly. What I did notice actually was the audio wasn't that great. And I'm pretty sure that I've got the audio set up. Hello. Alright, looks as though maybe the microphone's going through the wrong one. I don't think now. I get the feeling that I'm going through just sort of the desktop microphone. But I don't see any easy way to add, because this microphone here is not the one that is picking up the audio. And I'm really not sure that I can really sort that out easily. Because if I try to add an audio, it's not giving me, there's no sort of. Okay, well that's something to work on, because obviously that's a better microphone. I did notice that it wasn't so great, but anyway, here's my live stream on. So I won't speak. Oops, I'll have to do something about that. There's me. I can like my video. The only person that ever does. Total of no people watching. That's fine. I had someone watch. It said 3 watchers. It was quite anxious, really. So maybe I'll get some watchers at some point, but that's not my main sort of goal at the moment. But it's not streaming properly. It's or is it? Yeah. I mean, obviously there's a delay, but I still seem to be moving. Yeah. So I'm sort of moving. Right, it's caught up. There I am. It's about a minute behind. Anyway, that's not really the issue. Let me just pause that. So we've captured that. It's an interesting situation, because it's something that I've not sort of covered before. Obviously, I've been sort of a bit lax on things. I used to cover anything that moved. Like just anything that happened. And I like these small maps. So I might stick back to the small maps. Like a prison break in Sudan or DR Congo. Democratic Republic of Congo, or just sort of anything. um, standoffs or whatever. But this is sort of interesting because I didn't really realise that there was the tension. I mean, obviously, the last time that Afghanistan was on my radar was when the Western forces. I wouldn't say the United States because it's the Western forces, isn't it? It was everyone, mainly the US, when they left. And then it sort of went quite quiet, with obviously the Western press decrying their treatment of women. But my perspective on that was that as soon as they left, everyone stopped dying. So what they've got at the moment is fairly trivial in comparison to sort of the regular occurrence of roadside bombs and things like that. I'm not sure how they're doing. I sort of recall a couple of stories where they were sort of trying to get Western help for certain things, but they appear to have the Taliban, who appear to still exist in some sort of format, appear to have sort of pretty much wiped out the opium trade. That was one thing that I gathered. I might be wrong on that. So, and well, I really don't know, but I think there are a lot of people that are claiming that the US interest in Afghanistan was to harvest the opium trade, and so it's all a bit conspiratorial, really, in that regard. But but beyond that, I've not really heard anything. It's not as though there were continuing fractions in the in the Afghanistan sort of ruling party. It's not as though because there are different types of, not so much different types of Taliban, but Taliban made up of lots of regional areas and regional groups, and if I could say it correctly, maybe regional warlords that are all sort of like clumped together under the Taliban brand. Some of whom were more more extreme than others. Basically had different beliefs, and there's always that possibility that there could be internal conflict, a power struggle, especially with regards to the way they managed society, etc., which is something that we could possibly be looking out for in Syria. But to be quite honest, didn't hear anything. This is the first I've heard of Afghanistan really since 2021. So it's quite interesting to put something back on the radar like that, as a map, and sort of think, okay, well, there's this situation between Afghanistan and Pakistan. It's just border conflict, but that's war, really. That's the essence of it. And I did sort of think, because this person wrote, I don't like Twitter for that reason. You sort of get this post, and they've got some video of it. It was like a little video post. Afghanistan declares war on Pakistan. I don't see how they could possibly declare war because they just simply don't have the mechanics for going up against someone like Pakistan. The sheer scale of the country to start off with. So they wouldn't really have any ability to sort of fight them, and they certainly wouldn't have the ability to take and hold ground. Even when the West was in Afghanistan, they didn't really have the ability to take and hold ground. It was really a sort of an irregular warfare. So they might be able to sort of ramp up and support for the TTP, whoever they are. But actually declaring war and sort of trying to invade and having some sort of ground struggle with Pakistan, I don't see that happening at all. But just like in Kashmir and the India-Pakistan border, the Indo-China border, there'll probably be lots of skirmishes forevermore. Although I don't know, like the Turkish Syria, Turkish Kurdish, Turkish Iraqi border with the PPK, it's going to be going on forever because for some reason they seem to always be hanging around, wanting to do nothing other than to blow up their enemies. The PPK, for example. I mean, they live in the mountains. Why? Anyway, that's all by the by. I think I'll leave it at that. But I'm definitely going to sort of try and ramp up doing a bit more. I said I'd do this. it's now sort of gone midnight. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. So and I can't really make any promises as to when I'm going to do the next one. It does depend on, to some extent, on how well this stream goes. That's what I'm trying to test. I need to be able to sort of jump in, jump out quickly. But I really want to get into the Myanmar situation, because there's just so much in there. It, even if I cover historic stuff, just to sort of get a grounding and a foundation on the who's who on either side. That's something I really want to cover. And I mean, to be quite honest, I haven't even looked at the Ukraine thing. I mean, I did this on the 14th of December, which was 2 weeks ago now. I haven't really looked at it again. I mean, obviously, I look at the South Front site a lot, and I always feel quite guilty. But so obviously, once I've got my feet under the table, so to speak, with regards to doing some live streaming, I think I might make a bit more of an effort to cover the Ukraine war, seeing it's the most amazing war ever in existence. And I still haven't really got into it at all. Still don't really know much about it. Did a bit in the first year, I think, but yeah. So a bit more on the on the Ukraine situation. I mean, you can see I did actually touch on these. These are North Korean units, and they did actually have some sort of official report that officially North Korean units are actually there. They captured one, but he died shortly after. I read today that someone has captured a North Korean military device of some sort that's quite important, and so it'll be interesting to see how far the North Koreans go into that and what that actually means. And I'm also keeping obviously an eye out for what Trump is sort of, muttering with regards to Ukraine, because it was his basically assertion that it will stop the day he enters the White House. So we've yet to see, but it seems as though he's posturing really, possibly trying to sort of, gain more for Ukraine, but at the same time simply end the war, because he was saying that he would that he would just stop all support. But Congress, I think, and Trump have agreed that they will continue to support the Ukraine during discussions for defensive purposes, which seems a bit of a, again, it's another sort of turnaround, really. So whether or not it finishes as soon as he enters, it will be interesting to see. I know that Putin has requested talks in some Slovakia state, so maybe they're going to be talking about it. But it did strike me and I think I might have said this before, but it did strike me that when Putin, when Israel, when Syria fell and Israel took control of the Golan Heights and some of those other regions, Quintera sort of sectors, and obviously Iran pulled out, the Russians pulled out. It did strike me that from other commentators that was the goal, to weaken Iran through the Lebanon situation, and then to sort of basically follow through with Syria. And it seems to me that could be exactly the same sort of game plan for Russia. They've certainly weakened Russia. I mean, one commentator I read today, and I wouldn't pay much heed to it really, but it was saying Russia needs to stop the war if it's going to avoid economic collapse. Well, the thing is, to some extent, if you base what's been happening in Israel with Gaza, Lebanon, it just seems as though they were pandering and paid. They needed some sort of preamble to take up the energies of Iran and its allies, and then after that, after they were exhausted by that, then they just went in on Syria. What I'm saying is basically, it wouldn't surprise me if we see a massive NATO strike on Russia, because they're weakened. That's what's happened. That's all that's been happening. It's just been a war of attrition designed. So you could think that the master strategy was to just get to Ukraine to attrition Russia, so heavily that in 2 or 3 years' time, so then we're probably not concerned. It's therefore saying we don't care about who gains what. It's best that we look like we're losing. So best we look like we're losing, so then we can come in and make a big ground. We don't want to look like we're winning. I'm not saying that was not what they were doing, but it seems to me that this could be like a big pool shark type scenario where Russia, NATO will go in, take sizable chunks of Russia because Russia's economy, I don't think it's as strong as people say. I mean, I've looked at some of these statistics, and they're saying things like, there are sort of like, I don't know, 350 million Russians. I'm just making that up. And then it compares it to things like England, where we have like 60 million, where it's only a sort of like a quarter. How many does France have? How many does Germany have? How many does Italy have? How many people are there in the EU? And then we've got heads of UK armed forces, heads of British Army, talking about how we're not ready for war and how we need to mobilise and we need to get into war mode and how we need to sort of prepare for conscription and things like that. It just seems to me that because I thought that the Ukraine war was unthinkable. And I think, even thinking about this Russia situation is unthinkable. But I think that Trump has shown himself to be quite two-faced and deceitful and dishonest in a lot of things that he's done already, and he's not even stepped into the White House. And he's sort of saying he's the president of no war. He's not going to run next year. He's not going to run in 2028 or 2029 or whenever it is. I mean, it could be all a sleight of hand. And the big plan is to basically take a huge chunk out of Russia. Some sort of event like the downing of the recent passenger aircraft over some, satellite country, which Russia sort of admitted partly some sort of responsibility. I don't know. I just get the feeling that we could be seeing that, and also we could be seeing some sort of, I don't even know how you do it, but some sort of ground invasion on Iran. I mean, they did it in Iraq. They did it in Syria, and obviously did it, all over cause civil war in Libya. But I think the big game plan is to take out Iran. And it's sort of like, well, I haven't even got an idea how they do that because it's a big country. But the thing is, war has changed. I mean, you just need to. It'll probably be a massive campaign of rocket strikes because I think someone described Iran as a paper tiger, and I think they tried to demonstrate their power with the missile exchanges with Israel. And I think basically the silence sort of suggests to me that they didn't do any damage at all. Their Iron Dome system pretty much knocked out every missile that came in. You can't send 1,000 missiles and have only 10 possibly land. I mean, even the Houthis are still sending their missiles from Yemen. I just think that, and then obviously Israel counterstruck with their own sort of, anticipated missile strike, and I think they did quite a lot of damage to Iran. And I think basically Iran doesn't have the counter missile technology that they would like, and so this is part and parcel of why they were sort of, less assertive in the fall of Syria. And I think that, there's going to be some sort of, I don't know. I think there could very well be an Iran war, and obviously there's a lot of talk about Taiwan. And if you'd asked me, say, 3 years ago, because it's obviously now nearly 3 years, it's over 2 years at least since the Ukraine situation. If you were to ask me whether or not there could be a war, I was thinking peace is breaking out. Peace is going to be everywhere, and there's going to be no more war blog because everyone will be happy and peaceful. Then there was that sort of Azerbaijani situation or wherever it was, and that was quite interesting. I missed a lot of that. And then there's this, and I just think that the concept of perpetual war is actually going to be with us forever. I think that I think it's unthinkable, and because it's unthinkable, I think it's quite likely. I'm just sort of thinking I can't see it. You sort of think, oh well, I can't see it happening. But I think that our leaders have got a good understanding in the Ukraine situation about how difficult it is to make ground for either side, and and I think that they might take this opportunity to actually make to change the balance of power, because it was, I think it's called the BRICS nations, and they're sort of moving away from the petrodollar, and the pushing Russia out of Syria was a big sort of get out of our whatever it is, the reserve currency dominance, type sort of situation. And I think that they're going to sort of try and push back and then reassert the West as the dominant force, having sort of taken a step back as Russia has asserted itself with India and China as sort of a potential bloc. I just think that they've learned that losing a few villages and towns. I think the people in power in England would want nothing more than to be having lament on BBC that 3 or 4 bombs fell somewhere in our country, because we wouldn't get damaged. And I think that in that knowledge, as long as they can keep it from being nuclear, I think they might actually go for it, because war is money. The military complex is it's a big money earner and power, and I just think that it might happen. I'm not saying, oh, it's going to happen. I'm not like sort of like um, there's a big conspiracy and they want us to enter World War III. I think it'll be fairly regional, but it'll be in the same light, as we've been seeing a lot of these things, just sort of taking a bit of ground here, taking a bit of ground there. But it'll be something sort of strategic or symbolic that will basically force Russia to concede to certain terms, maybe even possibly, giving everything they gained in the Ukraine back. That would be the ultimate sort of turnaround really on that. So anyway, I mean, I just think that something like that will possibly happen, mainly because I could not conceive of it a few years ago. And seeing what we're seeing now, the hypocrisy, it just seems that they are certain and determined that Russia is the enemy, that China is a nemesis, and that Iran is a terrorist state. And there's no matter what people say, that is the bottom line. That is the party line in the West, and I can see them regardless what anyone says. It's just like the situation in Gaza. The West is really saying, "Oh, it's a shame that 40,000 Palestinians are dead," and that's it. You know, America is saying, "Listen, Israel, you're being really, really mean. You're blowing all these people up without bombs. Here's a few more bombs, but just don't blow up any people. And when they blow up more people, listen, we've been asking nicely when we give you all these bombs to not blow up any people. It's not convenient." And they're still doing it. I mean, basically, just hypocrites. And America is complicit entirely in genocide of countless people in Gaza for no reason whatsoever. I mean, the October 7th sort of situation, I think it was, in my mind's eye, was something I thought, well, what do they expect us to do? Well, what they expect us to do is to not seek an eye for an eye, not to be vengeful, would be to seek a proper solution from the proper authorities, maybe the United Nations, or to call to the world stage, what's happened, and say this is terrible. We're not going to rise up and kill countless innocent people because of it. We've got to solve the situation. We've got hostages, and come to, but they didn't. They didn't do any of that. There was, if I often think that if this was I often think of local situations. If this was a local situation, and let's supposing someone had done something terrible to my family, and they live down the street, this is like me going over to their street and killing them, killing their family, killing all their friends, and killing everyone that lives on their street. It's like that's actually overkill. It's not right. What you need to do is you call the police, you tell them what's happened, and they will go in there and do what they can. And I'm not saying there is a world police, but I just don't think that what they did. I think what they did was they seized the day, and the only people that could have really stopped them really would have been the United States, because they're the ones arming them. So, and anyway, I don't want to get too political. I'm just sort of talking generally, really, which I don't really want to do. I just wanted to keep this sort of quite strictly on the Patika province situation here. So I'll leave it at that. But all I'm saying is I'm going to hopefully get more scenarios done and be a bit more active, be a bit more sort of streamy, because I think I sort of enjoy it, and I enjoy looking at me like a little puppy in that little square down there. I think I get the hang of that. So anyway, I'll speak to you later. Of course, once you press the stop streaming, it asks you questions like, you will not be able to reconnect. Your stream will stop and you will no longer be live.